Okay, we're going live. Let me see. I believe we are actually live. Can we do a quick sound check? I'm Brian. Can you guys introduce yourselves quickly?
I'm Will.
Hello.
Hello.
I will. I will.
Hi there. Hi, Max.
Hi there, I'm Max.
Can someone in the chat just confirm that we're all audible?
Hey Archie, or whoever this
We
is.
are live. Can we do?
I will.
Hi there. Hi, Max.
Hi there, I'm Max.
That was me
No,
by accident.
It's getting confusing. I guess it's fine though. So
Yeah, good.
So let's rattle through this very quickly. So I'm Brian Waters from the QTube, and we have Max and Will, who are the filmmakers really behind this Fortuna wonderful documentary that we're making out in Brazil. I want to emphasize again that I'm not going to Brazil, but these two lucky fellas are. So do you want to very quickly introduce yourselves, chaps? Will, do you want to start?
Yeah, you say lucky, Brian, but it's going to be a tough excursion out there. But we're ready for it. We're ready for it. We just did 5 weeks on the Isle of Skye, so I think that was like perfect training. Yeah, I'm Will. I'm a writer, director, and producer. I will be producing Fortuna alongside Brian and Max, literally alongside Max in Brazil, and in spirit with Brian.
yeah. Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Max. I am a director, producer, directing Fortuna. Come from a cinematography background, working as a gaffer and DOP, but transitioning now more towards documentary work and focusing on these sorts of stories. So really excited to be a part of it with this crew. And yeah, get it done. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent, thank you. So, I mean, we've touched on various aspects of this project during a number of different streams that we've done and how it came to pass and so on. But when we did a recent live stream where we spoke about the sound department that we're setting up for this and the opportunities for composers within our community, there were some expressions of interest in the chat about learning more about the actual filmmaking side of it, like the cameras and the logistics and the kit. So really, I'm going to take a back seat here and let you guys kind of give us an insight into how you're going to make this specifically, and maybe some of the broader issues around filmmaking and camera work and so on. So I'll let you guys take a lead, really.
Yeah, fantastic. How's best to start this? Is there questions we want to go through, or should we just sort of free flow? You can talk a bit about our setup and how we're going to approach it, maybe some of the challenges.
I think
Start with that.
Yeah, I think one of the initial questions that prompted the idea of doing this live stream was simply, can you talk about some of the cameras that you're going to be using for this shoot?
Yeah, absolutely. Will, let's pass you over to this. Will can discuss this, seeing this is his equipment.
Well, Max Max needed to do a development trip for this project, and for that he needed a nice lightweight rig which could also pack a punch. And actually, the Fortuna trailer that the QTube has put out to the community was shot on this particular rig. So this more or less emulates the rig that Max went to Brazil with, which is a lovely Tokina lens, which is an 11-20, which was actually a recommendation by Max. It's super wide, 11 millimeter. So yeah, when you go wide on a certain format, you can actually see the edges of the lens. Some elements end up coming into the frame, but if you shoot on a Super 35 sensor, then you get a really nice wide letterbox image with no outside elements in it. And this Atomos monitor enables this particular camera to record in Apple ProRes. ProRes is a format which allows for an easier editing flow and also gives you a lot of color information. So it's a desired format within the industry. Now,
Yeah.
yeah, Max, tell them about this box on the front of the lens. You're the light guy.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'll start by talking a little bit just to add to what Will said. I mean, I came to Will with this project, and usually when we're doing camera tests for commercials or some fashion bits, we have a real selection of equipment, and we can go through and work out what's really going to work for us. And generally, we're looking at Arri software, Sony stuff. But by the time you've rigged it all out and you've got the lenses you want and the rigs, it's massive. So one of the first things I said to Will, I brought him a rucksack and I said, I'll take whatever camera you can fit in this rucksack and I can pull out and we can click record. Because what's more important for us now is that we're able to capture the footage at the moment it needs to be caught. And I don't have to make a faff bringing out an Alexa and putting vlogs on and carrying it on my shoulder, because I want to be invisible and I want to be able to get the shots. And we also needed to be climbing up the mountains and stuff. So just wait. It's not a good look, especially if you live in England and you're going out to Brazil in the summer to climb up some mountains. They're gonna suss you out pretty quickly. So this camera setup was super small, and we wanted to see what's going to pack the most punch for its size. So Will managed to put together this rig, scaling it right down and trying to find a few elements that could work just to take as much kit off it as we could. The Lumix system is great. It's not the most modern setup at the moment, but it's worked really well for us. But a lot of cinematography, especially when you start to go into documentary stuff, is not about having the best equipment. It's about making it work with what you've got. And we were blessed to have this setup because it's already a good setup. But there's certain things that we had to adapt to, thinking about what we're going to encounter. Like, how can we bring in equipment that's going to just make our life easy? It's going to be able to control the highlights. We know Brazil is super bright, so how can we work with that? So that's where a lot of this setup stems from.
One of those top flag which prevents the light from hitting the lens, so you have more maneuverability with the aperture. And something there which is reflecting your lovely faces back is, of course, an ND filter. Max, would you like to explain why ND filters are used?
Yeah, okay. This is a bit more like techie stuff. I mean, we'll try and go into bits with this, but essentially an ND filter is a neutral density filter, and it can reduce the stops of light entering the lens or like entering the camera sensor. It's either done before or after the lens, depending on what camera you have. It's like putting a pair of sunglasses on at like a very basic level. So you can have like darker sunglasses that goes from like almost like a slight tint to almost completely black. You can't see through it, and this allows us to keep the aperture of the lens set, or the other camera settings. It's a whole variety. This exposure triangle, we can keep those the same, and just put the ND over the front. So this is a lot of those camera settings, be it ISO, aperture, shutter speed, have huge stylistic effects, and we try and keep these consistent throughout the whole of filming. So the ND becomes a variable that we can change. So that's really the matte box, is not only to control lens flares, especially when we're on the wider lenses, which as soon as they start to dome and concave, it's just flares everywhere. And this is great, but sometimes you don't want that. So it allows us to control that element, but also bring in our filters, that neutral density filters in this sense, that allow us to work in all sorts of different light and keep our things the same, or other filters as well, like ProMIS and. Well, I mean, there's endless numbers, but yeah, they all have different purposes. But the ND one is, yeah.
We've just purchased 3 ProMist or Super Mist filters, which I don't know if you've ever seen a film and there's like a halation around the characters that makes the image give a sort of vintage, dreamy feel. The skin is nice and smooth. That is because of a filter that's put in front of the glass. And these come with all sorts of names, like Super Mist, Pro Mist, what was the other one? Glimmer Glass. There's loads of different variations of this.
Yeah.
And Max wanted Pro Mist, and I ended up buying Super Mist.
I think it was a black.
It is a black
Pro. Black Saturn. But they have. We were laughing at the names that they have for these things because they're ridiculous. Like Black Ultra Pro Mist thing, and like, oh, what is this? But they are great. They all have a purpose.
Here's another interesting item that goes in the front of the matte box. Now, this is about a 600-pound piece of glass. And if you can see what it's doing to the room here, it's magnifying things. So what this does is if I have a longer lens, maybe not the Kino, because the minimum focus distance means you can get a certain distance from the subject. So on my longer lenses, so for example, the 135mm, it's can be classed as telephoto. This particular device will decrease the minimum focus distance, which is almost 1 meter. So with that particular lens, as soon as I'm about 80 centimeters away, if I go any closer, I'll be out of focus and I can't focus at all. If I put this inside of the matte box, then I'll be able to decrease that minimum focus distance and get right up close. Now, this was more for my documentary Cobra, so it will be in Brazil with us, and perhaps used for Fortuna. We have yet to establish the use of it for Fortuna. But essentially, with this particular camera, we can shoot 6K, and I want to get really up close and personal and get shots of people's eyes, because I think eyes tell a story. Whenever you're talking to someone, you're looking them in the eye, the story is coming, verbally, but it's also coming through their eyes. And with this documentary that I'm shooting, we're filming with a range of age groups, and some older people that we're going to be filming with, their story really is in their eyes as they tell it. So I'd love to sort of capture everyone's eyes as we interview them, just as a sort of separate added bit of artistry to the documentary to see what it says when we come to the edit.
Cool, very cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So essentially, Max, you're going to shoot the whole documentary with that one camera, is that right?
Yeah. So I guess the short answer is yes. There are other cameras that pack a bit more of a punch for it, and that can still be rigged down to the smaller size. And yes, we could probably go, with the funding, it would be great to. I think this documentary would even allow us to shoot on some minis, or what would be, be able to go large format would be fantastic. It'd be very stylistic. It'd be super interesting. We're not going to be running the whole time, but yeah, this is the camera we're going to be using for this doc. One of the biggest problems we encountered is really just getting a lot of media for being able to record a lot of media in one day. When you're recording big files, 6K ProRes, it doesn't lend itself to just run for an hour and then another hour here, without long backups, and that just can't happen on documentary. So especially like this, we need to be able to factor that in. So I think that's been one of the bigger challenges, working out what camera is going to get the quality we need and the size and all of that, but still record in a way that the media doesn't become overwhelming for us. But yeah. In short, that is that.
It's worth noting that we will be shooting with two of these simultaneously on most of the days. And actually, we have Tevin Sahota, who produced Activities of Daily Living with you guys at QTube. He's coming along, and he's bringing Sony FX3, and we're all going to be recording into these Atomos monitors in ProRes. So we're going to have to be doing some tests in pre-production to match the cameras, so that we can maximize efficiency and get them all looking the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic that we've got Tevin on board, part of the family. This is great. So what about, I mean, there's a lot that's really interesting about this project, but I mean, presumably there's going to be some kind of camera on him at times when he's flying, or some drones or something like that. What else are you bringing into this?
Yeah. This is one of the things that was really hard to get right, and I think maybe a few years ago we wouldn't have been able to do. But wingsuit flying, this has been documented before. It's been filmed before. I'm sure people have seen it, with GoPros and helicopters and whatnot, and it's great. But when they jump, there's this instant separation that we get with the character because it's so incomprehensible what they're doing. We just can't really feel it. So there's definitely camera angles that we could try and get, so we could get that feeling of that notion of falling or that jump, that weightlessness, getting those really high, sort of almost inverted kind of angles as they go. And that's definitely something you've got to consider way before equipment. It's always got to, like, equipment's almost last. So, but in this sense, the newfound sort of FPV drones had come out, and we were really interested to see how these were going to work with Gabrielle, and like the risks, obviously, with using them as well. There's a few people that had pioneered this kind of setup for wingsuit flying in Austria, I think, and Norway, which is one of like the meccas for wingsuit flying. And yeah, Gabrielle had actually done something similar before, and there was another documentary that they had done with a plane, and it gave this real sense of, it wasn't like a wingsuit pilot following. It was a very weightless, but very, it had a very interesting and unique motion to it that actually felt very present and felt like we were flying, because the camera could drop and fall with Gabrielle, but then still fly in these sort of weird ways that and off these axes that we hadn't seen before. So this was amazing, and I think this is going to be the way that we get the main body of his flight and descent. We're also going to do it with a long telephoto lens from a neighboring mountain. Hopefully it's going to be like 500 mil ish, as close as we can get there's a land rushes past him. And then a shot that was inspired, from many things, but notably, like recently, Interstellar, of as that camera is mounted to the side of the rocket, the spaceship, and it thrusts off into the air, and you see the thrusters at the bottom, and it's got that sort of fixed reference point, which again feels totally different. Now, I don't think all of these are going to cut together perfectly, but there's going to be a way to do it, and it gives us sort of options from all different angles to really see, and if we can, translate the sense of flying to the best of our knowledge, at least with the help of Gabrielle. So yeah, the short answer is the FPV drone has really opened up that window for us to get to mimic that sense of flying. But also there's a few other ways we're trying to capture it too. So, but it's a good question. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, like, there's one question in the chat actually, which is, have you planned and storyboarded everything, or are you kind of, I guess the person means, are you doing it as you go, like when you're there, or to what extent is it planned ahead?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's probably one that we were trying to work out for a while. I mean, documentary is also like super hard because they're all different. I think generally I like to not do too much of that, and to be very, especially for this documentary, to be as character led as we can. There's some great cinematographers out there. I mean, obviously, I'm sure many might be familiar with Manuel Lubetsky or his work with Terrence Malick. The ability to follow the character movement, and it's almost like a dance with the characters, which is great, but it's very stylized. It doesn't fully work for documentary, I don't think. Robbie Ryan is another person who works with directors doing a lot of their characters are in real life situations, and there's this great sort of camera movement that follows the character. And I think we wanted to implement a lot of that. So try not to really block the scenes too much and to storyboard shots and angles, because it starts to bias the way we're designing the way it happens rather than letting it happen ourselves. But contrast to this, the nature of the documentary meant that some of the environments we just couldn't do this in, and they did need prior planning. So there are variables that we've had to consider, and plan. But I think generally there's a vision that I think a lot of us have, but it's all going to be very character led. There's a dogma we've created, like these are the landscapes. We set them up to look like this. We tend to hover around wider shots, establishing shots, and let the action unfold in front, and then we're character led, following handheld in every other sense. I think if we, there's a few more there. I won't go into all of them, but I think that is enough to kind of work out the rest.
Yeah, again, it's worth noting that like some documentary is observational and lends itself more to like a journalistic style, whereas other documentaries that have come out recently have been more like watching a film, like a theatrical film, because of how they're set up and how it's told. Yeah, luckily in Fortuna, Gabrielle is very much alive and has a very energetic lifestyle, so it will have to be observational. Whereas in contrast to that, the Cobra documentary that we're doing out there is telling the story of someone who's not with us anymore. So it is shaping the story based on people's experiences with the character. So there's these different variables to consider for whatever type of documentary you're shooting. So yeah, I think it was worth noting that.
I think everyone that has a vision, you know, or a way to shoot it, to a degree, you're already biasing the way the documentary is going to come out. You know, even the character-led stuff, we're interpreting the way that they're leading it and choosing to film in a certain way, which is already our perspective of what's happening and not yours. So there is always going to be an element of that that's hard to avoid, but especially with observational stuff. And again, how the character acts when there's a camera around is going to be different. So yeah, there's lots of things to consider there, but I for this one we haven't storyboarded a lot, but there is a sort of script that we follow and a tone that everyone understands. So yeah,
And there's a kind of general arc that you want to try and construct, really, yeah, with the thing at the end of the day when it's edited.
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Cool. And like, I mean, this is just from me. So, like, how many days are you planning to be out there? And what's the? Can you give us an insight into the rough kind of schedule? Like, how much time will you be spending on the mountain, and how long does it take to get up the mountain and stuff like that?
I mean, go on, Will, you can.
No. This is you.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so I mean, there's eight or nine scheduled shoot days for Fortuna. We're out there for a little bit longer. They're not going to all fall consecutively either, just due to the nature of what we're filming. I mean, in an ideal world, we would spend a lot more time following him around if you know if we had that opportunity, but we don't, and I think we've managed to schedule it so we can work around that a bit too. But yeah, we've got 8 or 9 days with Gabrielle and around Rio too. So we're going to be covering everything from his work at Corday with that side of his life, which is the police force, well, the judicial police force in Brazil. He works in a special unit there, and then also his work as a wingsuit pilot, and then importantly his work outside both of these jobs, just day to day, doing the things that you know you do on your time off, and I think or spending time with family. These things are important to contextualize the other events. So yeah, I mean, it would be great to spend more time, I think, in that area if I could choose, rather than anything else. But I think we've allocated enough time to work around that. I won't go into too much of it now, but Gabriel's an interesting character and posed a few challenges just because of the way he is to filming an observational documentary. When someone works in these areas, especially where you're on high alert or your situational awareness is really, really, you're highly strung. As soon as you put a camera in, and he's aware of this, but acutely aware of what you're doing, and this kind of makes it tricky. So Will and I and Tev have a bit of a battle here with him to try and see if we can not be spotted by the special forces officer. Oh. But you know, we'll see how it goes.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is such a great, unique film. I'm sure there are a million different, unique and fascinating aspects to it. Will, did you want to say something?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say about like the question asking side of it. I'll be doing that in Portuguese with Gabrielle. And I think, there's a certain psychology behind interviewing, which is important to make people feel comfortable and aware that you're just having a conversation, so it doesn't feel so regimented and robotic, as I'm sure, he's almost used to that in a way because of his the nature of his work. But on the other side, he has this quite spiritual life where he's flying, and like a bird. So it's trying to make him, I guess, feel the comfort when he's flying in the interview so that we can really tap into his true self and get some really authentic answers from him.
Definitely.
So,
I
Max,
guess. Sorry, go on, Brian. I was just going to add on to Will with Gabrielle. I mean, I know you mentioned how long does it take to get up the mountain and stuff. The first interview that we did with Gabrielle was as we were walking up the mountain. It takes about 2 hours, I think. It's quite steep, and it's quite hot, but it's great. It's a great walk. If anyone's ever lucky enough to be in Rio, I would 100% recommend doing it. But yeah, these moments, I think we have formal interviews that Will's going to conduct, like you said, with Gabrielle, but a lot of the dialogue that we're really hoping for is is going to be sort of almost candid or come out. We want to capture that as almost in moments where it's not super apparent that we have cameras up, and where it's of the scene. And I think as we put this together with a score and sound design and our visual language, we can really say more than maybe what he's spoken, or we can, work around that with very simple dialogue without having to over explain things. The documentary is very it's quite visceral. It's very, like, we rely a lot on sound design and score, which is why we're really lucky to have Brian and his team on board, and Archie. And this says a lot too. So those moments where he isn't speaking, he's not gonna. We're trying to show more than we're telling, really, with this. So there's that to consider as well.
Great. We have another question in the chat. It says, what about the weather in different scenes, different times of day for keeping consistency, like clouds or where the sun is and stuff like that? Like, how do those things play into your planning and your consideration, like the weather and the clouds and stuff like that?
Well, actually, we just shot for 5 weeks in the Isle of Skye, which is probably one of the most unpredictable places that you could shoot in the world. Because not only weather, you've also got midges there, and midges are a nightmare. But Brazil, there's no midges, but there are mosquitoes. So we do have that to look forward to. But yeah, literally the film we just shot in the Isle of Skye was all natural light. And we shot with an amazing DOP from Sweden called Harris Melvich. And Max had the pleasure of being his gaffer and light controller for the entire shoot. So shooting natural light meant that we were using only diffusion frames or bouncing light or taking away. So Max, over to you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really big question overall. I mean, I guess we can answer how it applies to our documentary. I mean, with lighting outdoors, a lot of it comes down to scheduling. We all know what light's like at certain points in the day. We know what it looks like on a cloudy day and a sunny day. And I guess your question is obviously like, how do you get the consistency, or, if you're shooting in these environments where there's such vast weather changes day to day, how can you shoot one scene right next to the other if the weather's going to change? And ultimately, there's a bit of scheduling that comes into that, but it doesn't have to be perfect for this film. The one thing that we are kind of planning, which is stylistic, is to try and shoot exteriors at a certain time of the day, that allows the final scene to sort of have a different feel. And that really comes down to shooting a lot of it towards, I guess, afternoon into dusk light. So the city itself becomes quite shadowed and tends to have darker shadows and gets a bit muddy compared to the bright sky above it in the mountains. So when we eventually, towards the end of the film, ascend Gavia for the first time, we have this literal, like, visually, we're going to use a lot more negative space in our framing. I know this is stylistic and it kind of starts to affect the documentary the way, but naturally we're going to get a lot more space around us, and it's our first time we can really breathe properly and get that clarity that we believe Gabriel has as he ascends this mountain. So that's something we've considered. But in terms of clouds and so on, how do you control it? Yeah, scheduling, like Will said, diffusions, negative fill. I mean, obviously when you can't control your sun and stuff, you can add shadow to shape your light. But just being creative with framing and blocking too, backlighting is always a good option too if you need to. There's a load of different ways that you can work around this. Backlighting is a great one for continuity. If you're working in a load of like bright sun one day, then shadows, or it's cloudy, if you try and backlight it a lot, it tends to, the way the contrast works on camera, you can kind of get around it a little bit. But yeah, depends what you're doing.
Brilliant, thank you. One more question, and then maybe we can start to wind it out, because I think like half an hour is good really for this. The one question that's just come in, I guess it relates to when you were out there doing the shooting that we used for the trailer. Were there any unexpected situations that came up while you were out there last time?
Yeah, so it's hard. I mean, I think unexpected, everything when we were there, we hadn't planned. We had planned a lot, but ultimately everything was sort of unexpected. It was all a new environment. So like going back to the equipment that we had set up, that setup was designed to be able to fit all those situations as best we could. Two things happened. I think the first one was when I was filming in one of the favelas. This was not unexpected, but this posed particular challenges of security and keeping things very discreet. And, I actually ended up shooting half of that documentary on my iPhone because some of the areas they were just a no-go for camera equipment. The risk was far too high. It wasn't worth it. So that was something we considered, and it was not higher than we expected, but we adapted by using an iPhone instead. We downloaded the Blackmagic app, got the log on, lucky enough to have the iPhone 15, which has done really well, and it graded great.
Mate,
So
I
you
just
probably
got
can't
one.
tell.
I just got one
Mhm.
2 days ago, mate, and I got this
Yeah.
militant case to go with it.
Wow. Yeah, they're great. And most people, I mean, I'm sure you can tell in the documentary, but when you're watching it for the first time, I hope it blends in. So that's a big up to that. I mean, the most unexpected one, which sounds really stupid, was there's some shots from a helicopter. I've never shot from a helicopter before. It didn't have any doors. So obviously, holding your camera out of a car window at 50, 60, maybe even more miles an hour, everything wants to fly off it. And I hadn't thought about this to the extent that it needed to be secured down. And yeah, that made some of the filming there a bit difficult, and the vibration of the helicopter too made it difficult. Now I'm sure everyone's like, well, obviously it's gonna all blow off, but yeah, that was maybe one of those ones. Everything else was okay, but yeah, nothing too unexpected on this one.
We
We
are
are
just off the back of that. We're working with producers in Brazil who are very close with Corey, and one of them is called Rodrigo Carlota, and he is trying to get us permission to go up in one of the military helicopters that they use there, which are actually, if I'm not mistaken, retired Vietnam helicopters.
Yeah, I think they're the famous Black Hawk or something. They were used in the Vietnam War. But they were the sort of American ones that are familiar in a lot of the posters or the Apocalypse Now shots. I don't know my helicopters. I don't know exactly what they are, but I think they're quite recognizable. There's something quite ominous about it as well. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
So Max, you're kind of for you even like shooting it. Never mind Gabrielle's activities. It's putting you in some quite extreme things, yeah, with the kind of hiking with all the gear up quite a high mountain is probably very hot, mosquitoes. Then you've got this kind of stuff that you're talking about now. I mean, it sounds like quite an interesting physical challenge as much as anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not gonna say that we're super capable, hardcore individuals. We're not, but I think we see that we understand the challenge in hand, and we're trying to be as prepared as we can be. There's a great seriousness about a lot of the areas that we're going to film this stuff, and sensitivity to it as well. So there's a lot that goes into that. It might look that we've just appeared in these sort of environments, but I've had undergone specific training to prepare myself to go into these environments and some of the things you might encounter, and working with military as well. This is like it requires a certain understanding. Mine is, I'm certainly not there, but I have a very basic understanding of things and the order of events that tend to happen. So that's one thing we've considered, and it's a lot. It's all just, I think, for us about preparation and respecting where we're going and listening to what's going on around us. But there, of course, are these physical challenges that we're all gonna undergo. But yeah, that's it. None of us are particularly hardcore or anything, but yeah.
Well, I think this is a huge part of what makes it such an exciting project, is that it's not just everyday footage. This is something really special, something really difficult to obtain. There's a lot of preparation that's gone into it. And again, I just want to repeat that we're really happy that you've sort of brought us into this. And yeah, I'm excited, and I'm sure you guys are as well. Thank you very much for doing this evening, giving us more of your time, and thank you to everybody that's tuned in and watched, and with your questions and so on. Again, a reminder, please, if you can, support our Kickstarter. I've put the QR code there on the screen. You'll find the link in the description to the Kickstarter. We really need your help to help us bring this together. And of course, we'll be sharing more details soon about the sound department side of it and how you can be involved in that. But yeah, thank you guys. Are there any closing words from you two before we close?
We're leaving in 10 days.
Yeah,
So
there's
get
that.
yourself to London, Max. It's time for production.
Yeah, man, it's all going ahead here. Yeah, there's a lot to get done and a lot to work through, but it's happening. So no, I couldn't be more grateful for such a great team working on this project. All of that stuff, it's great support, and the QTube community. It's great to have this opportunity to talk to you about some bits of equipment and the idea. We'll all really love it. So any more questions that, yeah, we'll try and answer them, I guess, in some way, or yeah, just voice them. Would love to talk to you more about the production and stuff. So yeah, thank you for listening and coming through.
All right, brilliant. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care. Have a good evening. See you
And
later.
thank you.
Cheers.